Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's our great pleasure to have you with us today in one of our sessions, free online sessions. And today my gift to you is our dearest guest, Katie Anderson. I will leave the introduction to her to introduce herself. But Katie is one of the key people working in continuous improvement in the healthcare industry, many industries, has more than 20 years working in continuous improvement and lean. And she has done a great book that Leading to Learn, Learning to Lead. She will talk definitely about her book, but I've been trying to get her with us for some time now, and at last we could get her with us. So it's great. This sessions come to you from Tanmaya Group and HR Leaders Kuwait and Quality and Excellence Middle East, HR Excellence Club, and our latest baby, Kata School Middle East. We are always trying to share knowledge and exchange information, build capacity of the people working in the region, in the HR, organization development, organization excellence and quality and everything. So we are happy here to have with us Katie, and I hope inshallah you find this very interactive, very adding a lot of value to you. Okay, and I will leave the floor for Katie, and we'll have some questions and answers at the end of the session. Please, Katie.
Great. Thanks, Mohammed. It's wonderful to be here. And a little context, Mohammed and I, we've known each other for a while, and I had the great pleasure of working with Mohammed. Was it probably a year ago now? You were part of the coaching community that Karen Ross and I are running, and it was really wonderful. Can I, if you stop sharing your screen, I can then share mine. And hi, everyone. I'm really looking forward to an interactive session today. I have some places throughout my presentation for you to reflect and engage, and then we have time at the end for your discussion. And what I value the most out of running live sessions is the engagement and questions and discussion with the participants who are there. So thank you for being here live, and I'm really looking forward to our time together this morning. Well, this morning for me, this evening for many of you where you are. So Mohammed gave you a short introduction. I'm based in California, yet I've lived in 6 other countries outside of the US around the world. Most recently was living in Japan in 2015 and 16, where I had the great honor and privilege to become friends with Mr. Isao Yoshino, who is a 40-year Toyota leader. And out of our early friendship and mentorship has come the collaboration of creating a book called Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn, about his 40 years of learning and leading at Toyota. And I'm going to share both stories from the book and Mr. Yoshino's experiences, as well as my perspective as a leadership coach, a lean consultant, and someone who's wants to help you become a more intentional leader. Because what is my purpose is to really help people connect with their purpose and align their actions. And I'll talk more about what that means. And I call that living and leading with intention. So our first point of engagement, and we're going to come back to this word intention a lot, is how engaged do you intend to be today? So we have some time here together, and it's okay to be wherever you're at, but it's about taking a moment to pause and reflect for yourself of where are you today, and maybe what do you need to adjust to be more aligned with how you want to be showing up to get the most impact out of this session time. So please use the chat function and just acknowledge for yourself and others where you're at for our time here today. So a one through 7 for yourself. So go into the chat and do that. Thank you. If you don't know where the chat is too, if you're on Zoom at the bottom, you should be able to see a function that says chat, and you can pop that in right there. So thank you, everyone. All right. So I want to tell some stories to ground us in sort of what I'm going to be talking about. This is a photo from 2015, April of 2015. My family had just moved to Japan, actually for my husband's job. I had started my consulting practice a year before that. And prior to my own consulting firm, I had senior leadership roles in healthcare organizations and in consulting groups, and previously in academia as well, in the early part of my career. And I was really passionate about continuous improvement in healthcare and then other industries as well. So I'd met Mr. Yoshino at a conference 6 months before we moved to Japan, and he gave me his business card and said, when you come to Japan, look me up. I will take you to Toyota City. We can go on a tour of Toyota and we can spend some time together. And of course, I was thrilled by this incredible opportunity, and I made my husband take the day off of work. I said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Little did I know how Mr. Yoshino and I would end up talking almost weekly for the remaining 6 years up until today, and that we're so closely connected. But this is us outside the Nagoya train station on that very first meeting. This is us in Nagoya, fast forward 5 years. This was last January. I was in Japan preparing for some study tours that I lead. Obviously with the pandemic, that wasn't able to happen, and I cannot wait to get back to Japan. But this year we've been able to continue our collaboration and get the book published, and it's been a really special privilege to continue to work with him. Mr. Yoshino is now 77 years old, and he has both a wonderful sense of humor and heart, and he also just is so wise in his mind. And so I look forward to sharing some stories with you. So this word intention, why is it so important to me? It's always been a word that I thought represents how we can be more purposeful and aware of how we lead our lives. Yet I got some greater perspective on the word intention when I moved to Japan and needed business cards made. I did not have any, I didn't have a logo for my business at the time. And so I said, just put the word intention. And so this is what it looks like written in the kanji script. And this lower part of the character on the left means heart, and the one on the right means direction. And I've really come to take that to mean that our intention is about connecting to what's important inside of us, our heart, our values, who we want to be, and then determining what are the actions that we need to take that align us with fulfilling that purpose of being who we want and how the impact we want to have. And I've been asked a lot of questions about what's the difference between intentions and goals. And I see it two ways. Or one is that intentions are more connected with our heart, with our feelings, with a sense of purpose. Like, who do you want to be? Whereas goals are more connected with the mind, more logical about what do you want to achieve, perhaps more external from you. Both are important, yet it's helpful to remember that no matter our external factors, what in our environment, we can always have control over who we want to be and how we show up, even if we're not able to achieve our targets and our goals. And there's a Japanese saying that I hold true with so much, and this gets back into creating a culture of continuous improvement, is we have to acknowledge that the path towards achieving goals is not linear, and it's full of failure and mistakes and falling down 7 times or more. But it's about continuing to get up and learning and moving forward. And these dolls, this is a very big one that I have actually as written with intention, Shiko, on my Daruma doll, represent this saying. They're weighted at the bottom, and I can't do it on my hand, but they write themselves back up. And when you have a goal, you can fill in one eye, and then when you achieve your goal, finally, you can fill in the other eye. And I really love, you can see I have a whole collection of Daruma dolls in my office here as well. And so this concept of failure and continuing to get up and learn is so important if we talk about continuous improvement. It's about learning from our mistakes, learning from what worked. How do we set things up as experimentation, and then learning and moving forward from that. We're going to do another pause for a moment and practice what is the word hansei in Japanese means self-reflection. So practice some self-reflection for yourself and note down what is one key takeaway that you have from this section. And please put it in the chat as well if you're here live. And if you're at home watching this later, note this down for yourself. The more that we can take pauses to absorb information and reflect is how we can also create more learning for ourselves and in our organizations as well. So going back to creating a learning organization, I was so curious when I first moved to Japan about what was the secret to Toyota's success. That they've one of the best auto manufacturers, most successful auto manufacturers in the world, and their production system, the Toyota production system, has been tried to be copied by so many organizations worldwide. And I kept asking Mr. Yoshino, what is the secret? And he'd say, there is no secret. And then one day he said, well, actually, maybe the only secret to Toyota is its attitude towards learning. We get too focused, my experience in working with organizations globally, on like the tools and the processes, but really fundamentally behind all of those is it's about a learning process. And how do we create learning for ourselves and learning for the people who we work with as well. So keep that with you around as well. And then the process of self-reflection too, in working with Mr. Yoshino, is that we can reflect sort of as I asked you to do now in the moment. We can also take a look back with more perspective and see things from a different way. And one of the biggest gifts that I've been able to get, I guess, offer Mr. Yoshino was the partnership of reflecting on his life. And I've learned so much from him, and I'm so grateful that he's learned so much from the process as well. When I first met Mr. Yoshino, this was at a conference the 6 months before I moved to Japan. He was on stage talking with John Shook, who's the other gentleman in this photograph, about their role as manager and subordinate, as they say at Toyota. And Mr. John Shook was the first non-Japanese employee of Toyota Motor Corporation in the 1980s when Toyota was starting to expand globally for its production. And Mr. Yoshino was tasked with creating the training program for the Americans to come to Japan to learn the Toyota culture and way of being. And so, excuse me, they were on stage together, and Mr. Yoshino said this comment that struck me as so profound, not only about his role as a manager in giving a mission or target and then supporting his direct report about how he achieved the target, but he was also where he's developing himself at the same time. And I've really taken this to be the framework of the essence of a leader's purpose and what I call the leading to learn framework. A leader their role is to set the direction, provide support, and develop themselves as well. And if we start with them ourselves to be more effective at the other two, then that is really how we're going to accelerate learning and accelerate the outcomes that we need for our organization. So I'm going to share a bit about each of these, and I really look forward to hearing your comments and reflections when we get to the end of this presentation as well. So the first component of a leader's purpose is set the direction. This is about providing a challenge, a clear direction, or a target that people need to be orienting themselves towards. This allows organizational energy to be moving in the same direction, and it also gives clarity on where we need to go and how we then can describe what are the problems that we're having in getting there. We spend a lot of time talking about the current condition, but if we don't know where we're going, we also then can't describe a gap in a problem. One of the important lessons that I've learned through my career, as well as talking with Mr. Yoshino, is that our targets or our challenges should be determined by what is needed, not by what is achievable. I have been in so many meetings with leaders feeling constrained by not wanting to set challenging targets because we may not be able to achieve them because they don't want maybe their compensation to be affected, which is a systemic problem that we need to address to create a learning organization, but also because we feel constrained or concerned about failure. But if we have a different mindset that a target should be determined by what we actually need, like the ideal condition that we need to be achieving, it can stretch our minds. And as Mr. Yoshino says, it's what you learn from the lessons of not reaching your target that makes you smarter. And so this is really an interesting challenge for those of us who work or in organizations where it's not okay to have failure and to maybe not achieve targets, but we're then missing that learning opportunity and we're missing out on really creating that real value of what is needed for our customers. Again, the leader's purpose then is to provide support. And this is the crux of this sort of shifted role of leadership. About it's not just the leader telling everyone what to do, but it's about enabling and creating learning and ability in other people. It's creating this balance between providing challenges and support at the same time. Challenge without support is going to create a situation where people feel maybe frustrated, or that their boss doesn't care, and maybe they even leave the organization. And then support with no challenge or direction, well, people might be feeling really great about their work, but then their energy is not oriented towards what is really needed to be achieved. So we have to balance that challenge and support. And part of a leader's role is creating and supporting the structures and process for learning so that other people can learn and develop themselves. You know, we can't change other people or make them learn, but we can create the environment that allows them to learn. And part of that is about valuing the process of learning. So not just focused on the outcome that needs to be achieved, but giving space for people to have those failures or not have the right answer right away, because it's about the learning process. And the more that we can have everyone contributing to problem solving in the organization, we're going to be getting much better results. And the problem solving isn't going to be just, you know, in a handful of select people's in leadership roles. There's a really wonderful story that Mr. Yoshino remembered for the first time when we were starting doing our interviews. And to me, this gets back to the foundational element that is essential for a learning organization, and that's psychological safety, as well as managers creating a safe environment for their people and taking responsibility for creating environment for people to be doing the right thing and taking responsibility when mistakes happen. So when Mr. Yoshino was a young man, he was 22, just finished college, university, he joined Toyota, and he was going to have a back office role. He was not going to be on the production line. Yet Toyota's orientation program was almost 4 months long. A month of that or so was in the classroom, and the rest of that was actually out on the factory floor to learn the value creation work of the organization, as well as to learn the values of, and the values of the company and what leadership meant. And Mr. Yoshino was assigned to the paint shop for one of his rotations, and he was to pour, solvent and paint into a big vat that would then get sprayed on to the cars. And he even admits this got pretty boring. And one day, the shop floor manager ran up to the paint shop and said the paint was not sticking to the cars, and 100 cars were going to have to be repainted. And all eyes went to Mr. Yoshino, and he was thinking to himself, oh no, I'm going to be in big trouble. But instead of that, they walked over and asked him to show them the process that he went through. And it became clear that the cans were labeled in a very similar way. It was very easy to make a mistake, and he'd put the wrong wrong solvent and the paint together. And not only did they not blame him, the manager thanked him for making that mistake, because it gave them an opportunity to realize that they had not created a working environment that was setting new people up for success. So they needed to label the working environment more clearly, and they were taking responsibility for that. So what a powerful story. And I actually can't think of a time in my own, any organization that I've been in, that there wouldn't have been at least that first wanting to blame somebody, blame the person, or maybe looking at the process, but thanking someone for making a mistake. That is totally goes back to this concept of the attitude towards learning, and that knowing that mistakes are part of the learning process, and that the manager and the leader's responsibility is trying to create an environment where it's difficult to make mistakes, and then seeing mistakes as a learning process for them as well. So then the third component is developing yourself as a leader. And it's about never stopping learning and growing. And I've discovered through my own career and in working with so many leaders that we start off getting deep knowledge and maybe one functional area or becoming an expert in something. But when we move into a people development role, we now need to learn new skills. So developing others is now a path to also learning how we need to develop ourselves as well and grow different skills. And this is about learning to navigate what I call the leadership continuum. So not seeing something as either or, but and. So it's not about just telling or setting that direction or just asking and providing support. It's knowing what's going to be most helpful for the moment to move things forward. It's not that you only are an expert or a leader as coach. It's about knowing how to own your expertise and when your expert knowledge is needed, and then when it's better to show up as a coach and asking questions and supporting someone else as they're learning. It's about providing challenge and support. And it's not just business outcomes or people development. It's like how we can do them together. So how do we start seeing these opportunities as a growth for us to know how to navigate these continuums? And as Mr. Yoshino says, it's far better to know that we still have to improve than believe we know everything already. I call this process personal study, adjust, plan, do. Many of you are probably familiar with the PDCA or PDSA cycle of plan, do, check, act, or plan, do, study, adjust. But I like to flip it because I really fundamentally believe we need to start with learning, which is where the studying is, and then the adjustment. So we can take the same process for ourselves as well as with organizational processes. So what are your current habits? What happens as a result? What actions align with who you want to be? What does better look like? What are you actually going to do and try to improve? Actually do it and then come back and reflect and learn and keep adjusting. Too often we do just plan, do, plan, do, plan, do. So if we start with study, we start with reflection, we're going to be able to set something up better as an experiment and then really continue and embed this learning process for ourselves. And this is how we create new habits.
Katie, may I ask you, Katie, can we go a bit slowly? Because sometimes people has to digest the English very well.
Yes, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm talking too fast for you. Yes, no worries.
And also if someone wants to check anything, okay?
Yeah, no problem. And I guess I'm sorry. I started to go too fast because I wanted to save it for more discussion. So I apologize for running too fast.
No problem, actually, because this cycle is very important, and I think maybe you need to spend some time here in this cycle. Okay, so again, if you can explain it once again for us, because it's very important and it makes a lot of sense for people. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So I'll go back. So we're very familiar with the PDCA cycle of the scientific method. And what I really want to emphasize is that the study or the check, so the S or the C, is really what we need to focus on, as well as the planning and doing. But we often just do plan and do. We don't take the time to learn. And so if we can start with a focus on studying, so study, adjust, really what's our current condition, what's the target, what's the problem we're trying to solve, or for either a process or for ourselves, then we can identify, well, what do we need to adjust? Then we can create a plan. Then we can take action, and then we come back and continue this cycle. When we start with PDSA or PDCA, we think that we just need to start with planning, but part of planning is that study and adjustment as well. Oh, there's a question about the difference of PDCA and PDSA. That's a great question. When Deming first went to Japan in the 1950s, he called it plan, do, check, act. But over time, he actually adjusted this to be plan, do, study, adjust, because he wanted to emphasize that it's not just checking, it's about studying and learning, and not just acting, but making adjustments. At its foundation, it's the same cycle, it's different words, and implied different ways. But Deming wanted to emphasize the studying component rather than just checking did something happen or not, but more from a learning perspective. So using words to convey, I guess, a richer meaning. And so I personally like the studying and adjusting rather than the checking and acting component. So that's just a little bit of history there. and then, continue the cycle. So it doesn't, the cycle is never ending, and this is the part of continuous improvement. So I'm going to pause again and ask you for one takeaway from this section. And then I want to leave you with 3 tips that I have found really helpful to take some of this into our own lives and actions that you may be able to get benefit from. So please reflect for yourself and put that into the chat. If you're here and if you're watching this later, please take a moment to reflect for yourself on what is something that resonated with you or a takeaway that you want to anchor for yourself in your learning here. It's okay to make mistakes. Yeah, absolutely. I want to share 3 practices to become a more effective people-centered leader and to become more intentional about how we are setting direction and providing support and developing ourselves. So the first, and this is my favorite slide of all of my slides, is to pay attention to the quality of your questions. This strange looking animal is a wolf disguised as a sheep. And this is to reflect that many times our questions, or what we think are questions, are actually our ideas disguised as a question. Our ideas with a question mark on it. Have you thought about trying my idea? Say, beware of fake questions. These are any prompting or leading questions, closed-ended questions that can be asked as yes or no. When you ask a question that offers many different options, sort of multiple choice, when you ask questions like this, you are introducing your own thinking and you are constraining or limiting the other person's options to respond. What is more effective is asking an open-ended question that you do not have the answer to, that typically starts with a what or how. So if you can remember the what and how, this will be really helpful. So try and reframe any leading question as an open-ended what or how question. Mohammed will be familiar with these drawings. They're by my friend Karen Ross. We need to listen openly, and not just with our ears, but with open eyes, with an open mind, not making assumptions, and with an open heart about what is going on for other people. And then we also need to, when I found is tremendously beneficial for me and others, is we need to slow down. We need to take these micro moments to take an intention, what I call an intention pause, to connect with what is my purpose or my role or how I want to show up and how do I align my actions. This is tremendously helpful when we are moving between different meetings or groups or parts of our day, because in one situation, perhaps you are the problem owner and you need to be in there doing a lot of problem solving thinking, or you're the leader who needs to set clear direction and be more telling. In other situations, maybe the next meeting you're going to, it's a one-on-one or a group meeting with someone, and you need to be there asking more questions and helping them solve problems that they have ownership for. So if we can anchor ourselves, what's my purpose in this moment? How do I align my actions? And this can be helpful, if you're transitioning to home as well. Okay, now I'm going to be present with my kids. This is what this means. It helps us be more, less reactive and more proactive about living the intentions we want in our lives. And to remember too, that reflection is the beginning and not the end of learning. So again, study, adjust, and then plan, do, and keep putting in these moments of reflection for your life and little pauses. Where can you create little spaces for learning for yourself and for other people as well? So I want you to set your intention. What is one thing that you will practice with intention to improve as a people-centered leader and to create a culture of learning and continuous improvement in your organization? So reflect for a moment here and please put that into the chat if you're here live. And if you're at home, take a moment to reflect and note that down for yourself. Oops, I'll go back. focusing on developing people, not only myself, so develop yourself and others. Yeah. Please put that in. And then I want to just invite you to join me for some other learning experiences. First and foremost, I love to connect with people around the world. So please reach out to me on LinkedIn or join my newsletter and be part of my community. I love hearing from people. There's the links to the book and the newly released electronic workbook that you can help you take the lessons from Mr. Yoshino's life into your own practice. And then I'm leading a workshop next week and have a special discount code for you here who've joined the this webinar if you register by Sunday evening. So you can go there, and this is the link for getting the workshop there, and I'll put that into the chat when we have our discussion as well. So thank you so much. And I look forward to now to have conversation. So I know apologies for going a little fast. I think maybe I had too much coffee this morning, but I really look forward to the discussion here now and really answering some of your questions and comments.
Thank you so much, Katie, for this very insightful session. And I think there is a lot of lessons learned, but I'd like to hear from everyone, their reflections and their questions. Okay. So please, if you have any question, either you can put in the chat box or raise your hand to ask directly. Actually, we can send also, after we finish the session, by tomorrow, we'll be sending the presentation and the recording. And also we can send this code, coupon, the discount coupon for this workshop. Okay, so that, and it will be great always to connect people with yourself. Yeah. I think here one of the challenges that we are having here in the region is that we're still working in I say that the main things are the basics, which is building systems. We're putting more focus on the systems itself, the processes, the hard side. Recent years, people start looking for the soft side as well, and leadership development and so on. But still, when it comes to the main items for building continuous improvement culture and changing the mentality of the leaders and getting the leaders to know what are they supposed to do, okay, we're still struggling in this part, so it's still taking some time with us. Yeah. So I'll ask you what, okay, we have one question here. Let's take the question and then I can ask you afterwards. About self-reflection.
Yep. So the question's, how do you practice self-reflection? What kind of questions do you ask yourself? That's a great question. It goes back to, like, there's so many questions you can ask yourself, but I would start with those questions on what is your purpose? Who do you want to be? And how do you want to show up? What impact do you want to have? And then even for the day, setting out like, who do I want to be today? Or how do I want to show up? What's my plan for practice? What are the things that I'm going to do today? And then at the end of the day, or out of one instance, maybe it's a meeting, just take a moment to reflect on, how did I do? I had an expectation of myself. This is what I was going to do, or how I was going to be. This is how it actually happened. Okay, so now what do I need to do or learn? You can also reflect on, organizational processes too, about how did you lead or contribute to the outcomes you're seeing in an organization or with your people? And also welcoming feedback and getting input from others as well. But the self-reflection can be really simple, and starting with making sure you set a plan for yourself and then reflecting on how did you do compared to your plan, and being kind to yourself. It's okay to, again, make mistakes. We're not going to be perfect. Fall down 7 times, get up 8, but then what are the adjustments you need to make to continue to align your actions with more closely with who you want to be and how you want to show up? I can give an example too. So when I started practicing this with more attention and intention, I had a realization when I was in a leadership role that I wanted to develop other people, but often I felt so, there were so many pressures of all the things I needed to do and the meetings I needed to have that it felt easier sometimes to just give my answer. Or I kind of knew the answer and just was giving suggestions or interrupting people. And that was not my intention to shut down their thinking or limit their thinking. But when I interrupted people or I was more telling than asking, I wasn't creating opportunities for them to think. And so I really put attention to, one, not interrupting people, and two, asking more questions than just giving my answer. And so that was something. And so I had an intention pause before I would go into a meeting and say that for myself. And at the end, I'd say, oh, how did I do? Okay, what do I need to do to change that? And that really was helpful in creating change in myself.
That's really great because, as I told you before, coaching is not yet very popular. Okay, it's getting more popularity. Okay, but still in the life coaching part, not in the business coaching or leadership executive coaching. So for people to pause and think and reflect, it needs a lot of clear mind. They need to devote some time for themselves. And also, what do you recommend? Do you think that people can do it themselves, or they need help from a coach to help them realize what they are doing?
So I would say it's both. You don't, having a coach and someone who can help sort of what I say, hold up the mirror to you can be very important and helpful. However, don't let that stop you from working on improving yourself. So you can still set your intention and you can do some reflection and you can ask for feedback as well. In doing that also invites other people to see that you are trying to improve yourself as a leader or whomever, and that may create more of a level playing field if you are in a leadership role, to show that you're being more humble and that you see opportunities for your own improvement as well.
But do you think, is it easy for leaders to ask for feedback? Because many people will be very arrogant or not that humble to ask for feedback.
Well, right. So that depends on the person, right? And so they have to create that self-awareness for themselves that they too are a business condition that requires improvement. So, we can't change other people. So the first, if I was working with someone, it would be the first they need to say, I want to improve. And then you help them along the way to see that. If people don't see, if they're totally blind to how the impact that they're having in their people and their organization, then it's a very different coaching or experience to help someone see that there is a connection between leadership behaviors and outcomes you're seeing in an organization.
Okay. Mr. Musad, if you allow me just 1 minute, and if you like to ask yourself, it's okay, fine as well. So do you like to ask yourself, or we can just read the question and we answer it?
Sure. Assalamu alaikum, Muhammad.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Can I ask Katie a question, please?
Please.
Yeah. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Musad.
Hi, I have a question. I just moved to a new department. Now I am having a new role effective from June 1st. So what's your recommendation or advice regarding my new intention for that department?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll flip it to you for one question, and then so what are some things that you are starting to think about for that?
Yeah, I started thinking about my purpose in that department and what can I contribute, because I was in the business excellence field. I was a lean coach for 11 years now. I went to Japan in 2013, and I went to Toyota City as well in Nagoya. I had a great experience. I started the lean champion program in my organization. Now I am top management. They want me to move to a bigger role. So I moved to a department called Operation Excellence. So it will start just next week. So I thought that I can do mainly focus on the purpose. What is my purpose? My new role, as well as what is the strategy? What is the strategy that is being implemented there, so that I can know the bigger picture, the bigger picture. Yes.
Yeah, that sounds great. So first, I want to make visible what I did, which was, so often when we're asked a question, we jump in immediately, give our answer, our ideas. However, if we can ask someone else a question back, like what's some thinking you've done about that, or what's one thing you've tried, or one thing that you've planned, you learn more about where they're coming from, and then you can understand better how to show up, or maybe what answer of your own experience could be helpful. So, and oftentimes people answer their own question. So they just needed space to think and permission to think. So that is another big leadership tip. So yeah, I think you're doing doing the right thing, and go around like what you talked about strategy. That's right. So what is the strategy? What's the direction you need to set for your group and for the organization? And then understanding your people. Where are they at? What support do they need to be successful, to be able to achieve the goals for the organization? And so getting clarity for yourself on that. And then going back to your purpose, as you said, like what's the type of leader that you want to be? What's the culture you want to create in your group? And then you're obviously in a coaching role for the organization. What are the behaviors you want to model for the way you want the organization to be? And when you can get very specific, so it's not about like just the values, but the specific behaviors as well, because we can't really practice values, we demonstrate behaviors. So you're on a great path. Good luck in the new role. That's exciting.
You have another question from Mr. Adam. Do you like to ask also yourself? Mr. Adam is asking for you have any personal experience with self-organized? Okay, is continuous improvement built in this approach?
Yeah, so the teal organizations, I personally haven't been doing work with organizations doing teal, although one of the companies I do some coaching and consulting with is exploring being a teal organization. And fundamentally, the concepts of continuous improvement fit no matter what type of organization we're in. So regardless if we have leadership structures that are formalized, or we're working in teams, we still need clarity of where we're going to go. What's that direction? What are the targets we need to achieve? And then how do we work together to create problem solving and bring out more ideas and creativity to support each of us to achieve that goal? And so if we go back on the principles of that, organizational structure can shift and change, but we need to know where we're going, and then we need to work together to figure out how we're going to get there.
I want to reflect again to what you have said in the questions and answers, and the title of our session today, because when I was asking about whether the leaders will be humble or listen or ask for feedback or accept mistakes, this means that these are the people who want to create continuous learning organizations, or they want to have continuous improvement to embed it in their culture. Otherwise, let's not bother. Okay, this is for this type of organization. They need this type of leaders, and they need to allow this type of values and behaviors, right? So it's not for everyone. Okay, it's for people who are only concerned of continuous improvement and continuous learning. Okay, so I'll ask you, what are from the lessons from your latest book, which I hope someday we can translate it, or at least have the key parts in Arabic as well to make it available for people here in the region. But what are the main lessons that you personally have learned from writing this book with Mr. Isao?
Yeah. Oh, so many. Well, one from the writing process, and I think this gets to the concept too around study, adjust, plan, do, is I had an idea of how the book would be structured. And I had wanted to, I have so many lessons from my own experience and from Mr. Yoshino. And I had this idea that it maybe would be structured like 10 leadership lessons and then stories underneath. But as we dove into exploring his stories and his reflections over 40 years, it became really clear to me that no one experience fits sort of cleanly into one lesson. And so I decided I wanted to share write his story, and then let the lessons come from there, and let people take reflect on the stories and the experiences and take their own lessons from that. So I have reflection questions at the end as well. So I think for the process of working together, it was about one, that reflections and stories don't come out in one memory. So this was a process of 2 to 3 years to create this book, and me keep continuing to go back and trying to help extract different perspectives and richer detail. And 2 is that the plan that we set out with may not be what's the right approach in the end. And so it was a process for me to also let go of the idea that I had and let it evolve into being still the outcome that I wanted, but it had a different structure. And so those were sort of two learnings for myself about the process of writing the book.
That's great. Do you think the lessons from Toyota can be applied in any culture, or they have specific their own culture in Japan, and it's hard for people to copy it or to learn from it?
Well, so I don't think anyone should copy anything else, but the principles can apply. And so I want to be clear too that Japanese culture and Toyota culture are not the same. There are elements of Japanese culture that that make their way into sort of Toyota's approach. But there are some things that Toyota does that I would say are countermeasures, or there are like, they're opposite. They're things to be opposite of Japanese culture. So Japan's a very hierarchical society where people look to the leader to give all the answers. Well, Toyota flipped that to be an inverted, pyramid where leaders are there to support and help other people and to encourage their thinking. And so that was a flip in their culture. So it's about taking the principles and seeing what are the things that are easier for us and what are the things that are more challenging, regardless of what culture, or, we can talk about country culture, we can talk about organizational culture, anything. And what are the gaps that we need to close for ourselves and the people that we work with. So if we're trying to copy the artifacts and the tools and the outcomes, that is harder. But if we can take the principles around learning, around flow, around value, around engaging people, around having a clear strategy, all of that can help us no matter where we are in the world.
Great, thank you. There's a question here about the audiobook release. When?
Oh, yes. Great question, because I just finished, just last month, finished the recording of the audiobook, and John Shook reads his foreword and Mr. Yoshino reads his letter to the reader. And it's under review right now, should go into pre-order, hopefully mid-June, and be released as an audiobook on July 14th, which is the book's 1-year anniversary. So please subscribe to my newsletter so you'll hear all of the details about that. But yes, audiobook is coming in, less than 2 months now. So that's super exciting.
That's great. That's great. And what made you go for an audiobook? Do you think it?
Why did go for the audiobook? Because many people consume content in many different ways. And so I wanted it to be accessible to many people. Mr. Yoshino's stories are so inspirational. Truly, I mean, I say that because even when I go back and read his stories, I learn something new. And I was really a poll situation. I had many requests for when's the audiobook coming out, and I needed a little space to not be working in the book, but it was one of my goals. And so at the start of the year, I began that project. And so I have a Daruma whose eye is going to be filled in soon. So I'm very excited about that.
Yes,
and
that's
also
really
and the book has been translated into Spanish. I'm talking to an organization about translating into Polish, and I just was contacted by a publisher in Japan who wants to translate it to Japanese. So I'm really, really excited by that.
That's great. Hopefully, you can have the Arabic version as well in the near future as well. What I really like about what you're really doing is that you're taking some of the lessons learned or the stories, okay, and you share it in pieces. So whoever is following up your posts or your page can benefit from a lot of lessons actually that you're sharing. Because again, not everyone is learning the same. Some people like to read a book, some people just don't have time, just get a post and read the post or listen to the audio whenever it's released.
Yeah, great.
Well, that's great.
Thank you, Mohammed. Well,
Thank
it's a
you
pleasure
so
being here with you all today. And please reach out to me and connect on LinkedIn and Twitter, other places as well. And for those of you who are able to join the questions workshop or the getting out of the habit of telling workshop, I'd love to have you next week as well.
Sure, it will be our pleasure. And please, any information you want to send to the people who attended today, please send it to me and I will share with the people who register, not only people who attended today, but people who registered for the today's session.
Yes, great.
Katie, just a comment about the purpose, what you have inspired people around the world to live and learn with intention. I really like your purpose, purpose-driven leader, and that transpires in your energy and enthusiasm what you have. And having worked with Toyota Lexus for 5 years, I learned the Toyota way. And whatever you are saying is completely resonates with Ikigai, the Japanese concept. You must be knowing the purpose-driven. I really appreciate. But here, this part of the Middle East, the leaders are expecting the quick results, but what you are recommending is it is not what you learn from the lessons of despite not reaching the target. The lessons what you learn matters. That's what you propagate. But whereas on the contrary, here we see something else here. So how can we strike a balance, especially during this crisis time? Please give a word of advice. Thank you.
Yeah, one quick comment around this is that outcomes are important. We don't want, it's not just looking, but it's about also understanding the process to reach the outcome. So Toyota obviously cares about the outcomes that it's achieving, but it's not just looking at the end of the year of what did we achieve and then, oh, surprise, how did we get there? It's about looking at the process and then making adjustments along the way. So having clear points in time that are set for understanding, are we on track or are we off track? And so it's creating those spaces for learning. So we still want to achieve that outcome. We need to get to that goal. But if we only focus on the outcome and not how we're going to get there, then we don't know how to replicate and do it again. And we can't learn from our successes. It could have just been, we threw the dart at the dartboard and we hit our target, but we don't know what we did that actually achieved that. Or if we're off track, we don't know how to avoid that or learn from that in the future. So how do we look at process as well as outcomes? So that would say, not just outcomes. So I'll leave you with that. Focus on the process and the process of learning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Katie. We really appreciate being with us today and wish you all the best. And hopefully we can do future sessions.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, everyone, for coming here live today.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.